Okay, we are back, and I want to just hammer home a point while my phone goes into over ping mode. And you lot, we've been talking a lot about MMA, we've been talking a lot about Mark Hunt. You lot want to know why I respect Mark Hunt, why I am a fan of Mark Hunt, why I admire Mark Hunt's fighting style. It's not just the way he fights, it's not just this guy has all-out wars. There's a story there that I just have a lot of respect for. We go back in time to 2004. Wanderlei Silva was the biggest killer in all of MMA when there was a UFC and a Pride, when we had other promotions coming and going. Wanderlei Silva was arguably the scariest man in MMA. Everybody feared him. He was like the Mike Tyson of that era at one point. He had this aura. He was the axe murderer. No one could stand toe to toe with him. He was taking everybody out with his aggressive, brawling Muay Thai style. Nobody could take him out. This is a man that hit Dan Henderson with knees and a choke and a punch to try and finish him off. This is a guy that we saw fight Quinton Rampage Jackson and knock him out silly. This is a guy we seen literally wreck an icon and a legend of the sport in Kazushi Sakuraba and beat him multiple times. This is a guy that was considered to be the best light heavyweight in the world and a guy that could go up a weight class and probably beat some of the people there. This was a very scary man with an aura of an untouchable aura. He goes in there and he fights Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt looked him right in the face, not scared of him, not intimidated by him. A lot of people break when Wanderlei does that pacing back and forth and wraps his hands, you know, and does all of that stuff. Lots of people get shaken by that. Mark Hunt's just staring him right back in the face. Everyone's talking about how great of a striker Wanderlei Silva is. He gets put in there with a real striker, and look what happened. Wanderlei loves to do that windmill style, and Hunt figures him out, and every time he's doing it, it's just countering. Boom, knocks him on his ass. Boom, knocks him on his ass. Boom, knocks him on his ass. Takes Wanderlei's best shots and knocks him back down. Takes him down to the ground. Yeah, I know he put his ass on him and landed, jumped on him, but this is a man that fought the scariest man in the world and diminished that aura, because I guarantee you, when you look back then, after that fight with Mark Hunt, Wanderlei Silva was not the same. Wanderlei Silva was exposed. Wanderlei was not considered this great technical striker when he was put in there with a technical striker that could brawl. Wanderlei Silva was exposed by Mark Hunt, and I'm telling you, that was the beginning of the end for Wanderlei Silva. Everyone will say Mirko Cro Cop and Dan Henderson. No, in my opinion, when he went in there with Mark Hunt and Mark Hunt exposed how good Wanderlei wasn't and diminished that aura, that was the beginning of the end. This is a man that went in there and fought the golden boy of Pride in Wanderlei Silva. This is a guy that went in there and fought Mirko Cro Cop. Back in the day, they fought in K1. This is also a K1 champion, by the way. This is a guy that lost to Mirko Cro Cop. A guy that lost to Mirko Cro Cop in K1. They fight in Pride, and he beats Mirko Cro Cop at a time when everybody thought Cro Cop was an absolute terminator, an absolute killer. This is the guy that could beat Fedor Emelianenko, who was the best heavyweight in the world, and he beats Mirko Cro Cop. He was considered like a guy on the rise. Unfortunately, the ground game wasn't his best part. Best part of his MMA skill set. He was a striker. He had losses to Fedor. He had losses to Josh Barnett. He didn't have the best run. He had a lot more losses than he did wins, and he was considered a joke by many people after a while. More of a gimmick fighter. He lost to Melvin Manhoef. He lost to Gegard Mousasi. He lost to Alistair Overeem. He signs to the UFC, fights Sean McCorkle, and obviously he lost to Sean McCorkle, and a lot of people are just thinking, well, Hunt's not really going to do much after this. But after that, this is a guy that rebuilds himself and starts winning fights again, and before you know it, this rise is happening that no one saw coming, really. He recovers from the McCorkle loss. He wins his next fight. I believe he even fought Ben Rothwell, if my memory serves me right. Old age is a son of a bitch. This is a guy that starts to rebuild himself. And the thing that I admire most about that, is the fact that history has shown there are guys that are never the same when they lose. Wanderlei Silva kind of was never the same when he lost. Things changed him. Miguel Torres, who was considered the greatest bantamweight in the world, when he got knocked out by Brian Bowles, Go back and check history. He was not the same fighter after that. Who else can I add to that? George St. Pierre. Granted, he started winning fights. George, in a lot of ways, changed who he was and how he was. You look at other guys when they lose and they just make excuses. Oh, it was my striking coach. Oh, the other guy was on something. Oh, the strength and nutrition guy ruined me. You see a lot of fighters go that route, but Mark Hunt always manned up and pretty much said this was the better man. You're talking about a man that worked his way back up from bad losses to a #1 contender in the heavyweight division in the UFC that is now currently occupied by the likes of Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, two of the biggest killers in the world. You're talking about a guy that has worked his way up to #1 contender status there. You're talking about a guy in Mark Hunt that beat Czech Congo, which impressed me, because I know a lot of people favour Czech in that fight, and he beat Czech Congo. You're talking about Mark Hunt, who then went in there with Junior Dos Santos, of all people, and Junior couldn't finish him. Junior had a hard time trying to finish this guy. Junior won eventually, and he took him out with a kick, but it took a very, very long time, and that's a dangerous fight for Junior to have, because Mark Hunt's power, I favour Mark Hunt's power over a lot of people. You're then talking about a guy that in 2013 fought Bigfoot Silva in one of the great all-time wars, brawl for alls at heavyweight. I will never forget that fight as long as I live. That was probably one of the greatest heavyweight fights I have ever seen. And no, it doesn't need to be technical, blah blah, all that nonsense that you hear. It was about heart, passion, pride. It was about seeing someone's soul. It was like seeing two souls in there. It was like seeing something very, very real, and it was dramatic, and it was a true clash of the titans, and it's a fight I'll never forget. I did a video on it and got completely trolled, but the point is, that is one of the most memorable heavyweight fights of all time in MMA, and Mark Hunt just became even more of a rock star. And I'll tell you, right after that, the whole world, the whole MMA community had a very different opinion of Mark Hunt after all of that. He became like a rock star, as Bloodstained Lane said. The whole world wants to see more of what Mark Hunt can do. He lost to Junior Dos Santos, he bounces back, has a war with Bigfoot Silva, and I think he could have won that fight. You have to remember, he broke both bones in his hands and he didn't care. Again, some fighters fold when that happens to them and they just fall apart. Hunt's like, fuck it, I'll use my elbows, and he's hitting short elbows in his face. You know, and I reckon if he hadn't broken his hand, he probably would have knocked Bigfoot out. Then you go to a guy that fought Roy Nelson, a guy that is not easy to finish. I think the last person that truly finished Roy Nelson was Andrei Arlovski, and Andrei was losing that fight. If you remember, Roy had him on the ground and they stood them back up. Arlovski then opened him up, hit him with a kick to the inside of the leg, opened him up, and then finished him with strikes. That was the last time we ever saw Roy Nelson get knocked out or tagged or stopped by strikes like that. We've seen Junior Dos Santos fight Roy Nelson. Junior got tired trying to take him out. We've seen Fabricio Verdum do a lot of damage to him but never take him out. We have seen a lot of fighters go in there with Roy that either get knocked out or just have a hard time knocking him out. And Mark Hunt takes him out. Literally just like that. Like that. Roy Nelson, a guy that doesn't get stopped very often, and Hunt just takes him out. You're talking about a guy that now is going to fight for the interim heavyweight title against Fabricio Verdum, and I have nothing but respect for that, because he's really got the odds stacked against him. You know, Verdum's had a full camp. Verdum is on a rise right now. This is a guy that beat Fedor Emelianenko. This is a guy that had a victory over Alistair Overeem back in the day. This is a guy that beat Roy Nelson. This is a guy that submitted Nogueira. This is a guy that knocked out Mike Russo in under 1 minute in the first round of his fight. This is a guy that's on a tear right now. This is a guy that's got improved stand-up. This is a guy that's a magician on the ground. Mark Hunt is going to fight him, and he's got all those odds stacked against him. And you think he doesn't know that, but he doesn't care. He's coming in there to fight. And I do think that the fight favours Verdum more, but I would not be surprised if Mark Hunt knocks him out viciously. If he does, he's going to have to do it in the first round. But you want to know why I respect and like and admire Mark Hunt over most fighters? It's things like that. Seeing what he done to Evanderlei Silva. Then he goes through the lows. Then he picks himself back up and continues. When a lot of fighters would just continue to fall apart, Hunt keeps going. And I have a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for that. And I hope that I said that in an articulate enough way to really strike a chord with people on there. It's just something that's on my mind. Another thing that's on my mind while I get going, very interesting week. Now we're going to kind of talk about MMA, but not so much. But something I noticed, and this is for everybody. So if you're an MMA fan, you'll probably hear this. If you're a pro wrestling fan, you'll understand this. And if you're a comic book fan and you're aware of the announcements that have been going on this week, I just want to see something and see what people notice here. You've got the UFC. Obviously, you've got one series of fight, but the main UFC. You've got the WWE and TNA to a lesser extent. You've got Marvel Entertainment, and you've got DC/Warner Brothers. And all of these brands have had big announcements, this year. WWE had the WWE Network. DC Warner Brothers announced all of these things, all these films that they had. TNA don't have a TNA deal, but they've announced all these other things, The UFC have had big fight announcements. They've had a network announcement themselves. They've had all of these things themselves. And Marvel announced their next 9 years of films, I think, almost, or their next 9 films, sorry. And you look at the two announcements, or you look at the ones that are probably going to be the most successful, and I'm going to be really honest with you, I think that the UFC and what Marvel have done will be more successful than what WWE, than what TNA, and than what DC Warner Brothers has done. Because when I look at what those two brands have done in particular, take those out of the equation. Now look at this. The WWE Network was announced years in advance. We're going to get it, we're going to get it, we're going to get it, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But did they really do it where they created a home-like feel for the fans and got the fans involved? No, not really. They had lots of television networks and lots of journalists, because obviously you need the promotion. But it just felt very like there was a big barrier between them and the fans. DC announced their things on a conference call. It's like they don't care about the fans in a sense. They don't want to get the fans involved or make them feel involved. The UFC, when they announce things, though, they go back and forth with fans on Twitter. Dana White goes back and forth with fans on Twitter. He's very good at that. For all his faults, he's always been very good with the fans and interacting with them. They've always done a lot more fan interactive things in comparison to the other promotions, and in that respect the fans feel involved and they're more likely to spend their money there. You look at what Marvel done this week, and Marvel announced their films. They had their journalists there, but they had so many fans in there, and it didn't feel like this huge gap between the promotion and the performers and the fans. It felt a little more close in it, and it felt like the fans were involved. And I'm going to guarantee you that what the UFC do and what Marvel do is going to pay dividends in comparison to what the other promotions do. Why? Because the fans are involved. The announcements are made in front of the fans. The fans feel listened to. When the fans don't want a certain fight, the UFC pays attention. When fans want certain things in their films, the fans listen to them. Or I don't know about the Fox thing, but that's another story altogether. But they do what they can to make sure that the fans feel heard and feel involved. And I think that is the big difference between the UFC and why they have had the success they have had with their fans, and why they make fans and keep fans, and why Marvel have had lots of new fans and are probably going to be able to keep fans. You've got to get your fans involved, you've got to get them invested, and when you don't, and you create this big divide, this us and them divide, things don't pay off so well. Anyways, that's another thought I've had. I'm going to stop. I'm going to upload this. Guys, I hope you're all good. I hope you all had a good Halloween. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. I've got a tikka masala in the oven that I need to take out. Guys, I'll see you all soon. Take care and bye.